This video introduces SAS numeric and character functions and how they are used in the data step to create new variables and alter existing ones. SAS has over 400 functions. The general form of a function is the function name, and then there are parentheses, and inside the parentheses are the arguments or parameters you use for the function. So all functions must have the open and closed parentheses. Here are some examples. Birthday equals MDY, and then the parameters or arguments are month born, day born, year born. And that was what we just looked at in the SAS demonstration video on dates. Here's another example of a function. We have new value equals int of the log of 10. So notice here we actually have a function within a function. We're taking the log of 10, and then with the int function we're taking just the integer value of the log of 10. In the next example, we're calculating average score as the mean of these 5 other scores. And you can write it two ways. You can list the 5 individual variables separated by commas, or you could write average score equals mean, and then with your inside your parentheses of score 1 dash score 5. So that works well if you have variables which end in a number, and you can just express the smallest value score 1, then hyphen score 5. So these are just different examples of functions and how they are written in SAS. In this slide, I'm showing 2 different ways of computing an average. In the first example, I'm showing how to use the function mean. So I'm listing all of the variables that I want to calculate a mean from, SE1 all the way to SE10, and creating a new variable called SEAVG for SE average. SE in this example stands for severity of an event. The other way that you could compute an average is with a formula, where we're just using the mathematical formula to calculate an average. We're adding up all the individual variables, which are 10 variables, and dividing it by 10. When you use the mean function, it computes the average of non-missing values, and the result is missing only if all the values are missing. So in the first example, let's say SE1 and SE2 were missing, then in that situation SAS would compute the mean of SE3 through SE10 because those variables all have values. When we use a formula, it requires all values to be non-missing, otherwise the result will be missing. So in the second example, if SE2 were missing and SE1 were missing for a particular subject, then for that particular subject, SE average, the new variable we were creating, would also be missing. So that's an important difference when you're computing an average and using a function versus using a formula. Let's say you have a situation where you want to convert a variable that is a character string to a numeric variable. You can use the input function to do that. Situation where you would need to do that is, let's say that someone inputted a date as a character string. If a date is input as a character string, then SAS is not going to automatically convert it to a SAS numeric value. And so we need a way to convert that character string to a number. The general syntax is that you take a variable, a new var, equal, and you're going to use the input function. Within the parentheses, you're going to have your old variable and then an informat. The informat must be the type you are converting to, which is in this example numeric. And we are going to look at an example of this in the demonstration video. On the other hand, you can also convert a numeric variable to a character variable using the put function. And this can happen sometimes if you had a variable such as age group equals 1. Now I know with age group equals 1, you could create a format And so that when you used a procedure and it had the format, then age group would have a label to it. But let's say you wanted to actually create a character string. You wanted to create a new variable that was a character string instead of the code 1. You would use the put function to do that. And similar to using an int format when we're creating this numeric variable, to make a numeric variable into a character variable, we are actually going to have a format in our put statement. The format must be the type you are converting from. And in this case, we're converting from a numeric to a character string. And again, we'll look at an example of that in the SAS demonstration video. There are a lot of interesting things that you can do with character functions. And SAS has many of these functions that can be used to work with character strings. For example, you can take 3 different names. Here we have 3 different variables, fname, lname, and mi for middle initial. And you can create a new variable, full name. So this is a single variable, which is a character string, and in this case it's my full name. So to do something like this, you're going to have to make use of a number of character functions. The functions that you're going to need is the SUBSTR function, which takes a subset of characters from a character variable. There's the lowcase function, which changes the characters to lowercase. There's the COMPBL, C-O-M-P-B-L function, which removes excess blanks. And then there's this, not exactly a function, it's an operator, 2 parallel lines, which concatenates variables or strings. For example, var1 equals a string ABC, var2 equals a string DEF, and then if you have var3 equals var1 concatenate, these 2 parallel bars, var2, you have a new string that's ABCDEF. I want to say a little more about the SUBSTR function because that's very, very helpful, particularly in a medical setting where, let's say, you have a person's ID and their treatment assignment together in one character string, and you want to separate out the treatment assignment from the rest of the character string. Let's say the treatment assignment is a letter A, and then the person's ID number is like 100, and you want to separate out that A so you know that subject's treatment assignment. You can use the SUBSTR function for that. So the general syntax of this function, you would say SUBSTR and then the variable name for character string, the position, and n for the number of characters that you want to pull off of that string. So here I'm taking the example, let's say the fname equals Elizabeth. So if we have fname mix equals SUBSTR fname, comma 1, comma 1, the result is going to be that we're just pulling off the letter E. So again, let me go through this a little more slowly. fname, comma 1, that first one starts in the first position. So you're starting in the first position, which is E, and you're only taking one character. And so in this first example, fname mix, the result is just E. In the second example, we have SUBSTR fname, comma 1, comma 2. So we're going to start in the first position, which is E, and we're just going to take 2 letters. And so that result is EL. In the last example, all we have is fname, comma 1. If there's no third parameter for n entered, then the result is it's just going to take the full name. It's going to go from the first position all the way to the last position in the character string. So again, you can use this in a medical setting if you needed to take apart a patient's subject ID and pull off one part of the ID. The scan function is used for parsing or taking a string apart. And the general syntax of the scan function is that again you have a character string, and then you have n, which returns the nth word from the character string, and then you have a list of delimiters. A word equals anything between 2 delimiters. These are some default delimiters. a blank, an exclamation mark, a $sign. And so if you have a positive N, you are going to scan your string from left to right, and you're going to look for a word that might be separated by a space. If you have a negative N, then the string is going to be processed from right to left. And if you have less than N words, the scan function returns a blank. This function is a little more complicated to fully understand just from this PowerPoint slide. I think it'll be more clear how we can use the scan function when we look at the SAS demonstration video on character functions. So here let's look at an example of the scan function. We're going to start with one variable for a full name, but wish to create separate variables for each. So here we have data names, and we have two names that we're reading in, my name and one of my colleagues' names. And so notice here that we're going to separate the full name into individual parts of the name, F name, MI, and L name. So in the first example, we do a scan full name looking for the first word. And by default, blanks are used as the delimiter. So if we scan the whole name Elizabeth R. Lydon, then the first word, F name, is going to be Elizabeth. So F name is now going to equal Elizabeth. MI, we're going to scan the full name and take the second word, where the word is separated by a blank. And so here we're going to get the middle initial R. Finally, we're going to scan full name and take the third word. Again, our delimiter, what separates these words are blanks. In the last situation, the L name is going to equal Lydon, the third word. So here we're using the scan function to separate one long character string into three separate variables. The last function I'm going to talk about and we'll look at in the SAS demonstration video is the index function. And the index function is used for locating the position of one string within another. So you can determine word occurrence in a comment. So the general syntax is index, and then within the parentheses, character variable, so some character string, and then in quotes, the specific string you're looking for. And what the function returns is the starting position for that string of characters. If the string is not found, then the function returns a 0. So here we have an example of a character string that's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We use the index function, so we're taking index, the name of our character variable is string, and we're looking for the three letters E, F, G. Then string now takes on the value of 5 because it is in the 5th position that the start of that substring EFG was found. The SAS demonstration video, Numeric Functions, introduces you to numeric functions and how to convert numeric variables to character variables and numbers that were read in as character strings to numeric variables. The SAS demonstration video Character Functions introduces you to character functions and how they can be used to take apart character strings and concatenate character strings.